bet it's a bullet gonna get the last laugh.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about this interesting moment that happened or that's been happening since the release of Armor King. You have the GOAT, JDCR, returning to glory. For those of you who just showed up in Tekken 8 or at the end of Tekken 7, you may not be familiar with this name. JDCR was having a real character crisis very late into Tekken 7, and it even carried into Tekken 8. The characters he play is Armor King, Dragunov, and then he has a couple of others that he dabbled with, Fakram and stuff like that. But the thing about JDCR's Dragunov, it's good, it's great. And in the era of Tekken 7, his Dragunov was insane. The two players that you're seeing in this match right now is JDCR and Saint. At one point in time, these two guys were both on the same team. I believe the team was called Echo Fox. And throughout all of 2017, these two guys would dominate the whole entire tournament, and they would get to grand finals, and it would be a JDCR Saint battle for first and second. And usually JDCR would win first, and then Saint would win second. It was kind of very similar to what happens now with the Pakistanis, how like Atif and Arslan bodies the whole tournament and they battle for first place, second place. It was very similar to that, but it was in a totally different era. And in that era, players were very, very upset. People used to walk out of tournaments. People used to boo the game. People used to be so upset that JDCR was displaying some of the most incredible defense. What I also would highlight is a lot of that anger also came from the Korean players and Japanese players having Tekken 7 2 years early. For everyone else around the world, they got to play Tekken 7 in 2017. Meanwhile, those guys had it for an extra 2 years, and that's really what gave them the competitive advantage. And when it was time to put the Tekken World Tour and bring everyone together, the Koreans and Japanese dominated. And the strongest of that, which was JDCR at the time, it was untouchable. So that was also a lot of where the anger and resentment came from, which is why Tekken 8 at the start of the game, they made sure to say over and over and over that everyone's getting the game at the same time, because that was a big problem during the era of 2017. And I don't think the developers expected it, but they definitely learned from it. But JDCR in that era of Tekken 7 made everybody sing a different tune. People were so sick to their stomach because he was so good. He was so good. He was so talented. He was so undefeatable. It was only until the end of that tournament year at the finals where Kunans finally dethroned JDCR and won. It was a huge moment of celebration. And then once the balancing patch came, because you know the developers do balancing after tournaments, once the balancing patch came, Dragunov got completely destroyed, and JDCR along with him. There was no Armor King in the game at that point, but then even when Armor King showed up, he wasn't a powerhouse, right? So ever since that point, JDCR was struggling to find a new character, struggling to find a new groove. Then you had Knee rise up. You had the Americans like Anakin, Cuddlecore start to rise up. You had the Pakistani arc come on. Everyone's playing Akuma, Geese Howard. That's when JDCR kind of fell to the back of the conversation when you're talking about who's the best at Tekken 7. And he really didn't reappear until way, way later when Fakram came out. Now, for a lot of people, he still wasn't on their radars because the pandemic was taking effect. And there was a bunch of online tournaments. In Korea, they had a small like tournaments, invitationals, closed circuit type tournaments. You know, 16 people, 30 people show up to this tournament. So it was a very small thing. But in those tournaments, he used to do well with Fakram. You know, Fakram was really powerful in that game. So there was a lot of tournaments that would boil down to Fakram mirror match grand finals. And he was able to find some success there. But now fast forward to Tekken 8. Once again, Fakram's not there. He's not that powerful. Armor King's not there. He's not that powerful. And even though Dragunov is there and he's powerful, it just seems like the other Dragunovs, like a Ulsan, like a Atif, just was better with him, just was doing better. Like JDCR would go to tournaments and whatnot, but he wouldn't place high, he wouldn't win. He was just kind of sitting there in the background, right? And this kind of carried all the way to where we're at now, the release of Armor King. His main is back. Armor King, according to everyone, is not that powerful. Bottom 10, worst in the game. No one's asking for buffs, right? We want all the characters to be nerfed down to Armor King's level. But Armor King is not that good, and he's not tournament viable. Everyone wrote him off, and Fakaram. Now, Fakaram is a character you could talk about very briefly as well. Pokechop was at this same tournament doing great work with Fakaram, and he's been doing great work. I think both of those characters are highly underrated, and they're a little bit stronger than what people are saying, but I also feel that way about a lot of characters like Eddie and whatnot, right? Reina and whatnot. But back to JDCR. When Armor King released, everyone flooded to his stream to see what he was going to do, to see what he was going to be capable of. Now, at that same time, everyone was also playing Armor King because he's the new character. The king is back. Dabbling, trying to figure out how powerful he is, trying to figure out what the strengths are. And a lot of people find out that he's not really that tournament viable. Now, his combo damage is insane, his pokes are pretty good, but other than that, he's not really a Tekken 8 monster, a dominator, a plus frame stance mix-up type character. He's a more traditional type character. So a lot of people start to move away from Armor King, go back to what they were doing with the Claudios, with the Lydias, with the Annas, with the Harongs, except for JDCR. He sticks with the Armor King, he continues grinding, he continues battling, and now we fast forward to where we're at now, and he has won 2 tournaments, back-to-back challenger events with the Armor King. Now, there has been Dragunov usage as well, right? He picks Dragunov when he feels it's necessary, but he is showcasing right now the best Armor King in the world. And I wonder, as he continues to win, as he continues to perform, as he continues to dominate, how will the conversation around this character evolve and adapt? Because the interesting thing about Armor King, if you compare Armor King to other characters, he doesn't look that good. But if you look at Armor King by himself, he has grab setups, he has good punishes, he has some good heat activate moves, he has some great launchers, he also has big combo damage. I feel like that is his strongest thing, is like he could really start taking away your health bar and then go for some nasty oki at the wall, some grabs. I don't think those grabs is going to be too powerful at pro level, but it will sneak up on you and you have to be sharp in order to deal with it. With JDCR winning 2 tournaments back to back, he's starting to appear on everyone's radar. I wonder if people will start labbing the Armor King, because we know some of these weaker characters get ignored. If you look at what happened in that previous tournament where Mogold pulled out the Fakaram and he won the tournament, some of these lower tier characters get ignored and no one really cares to lab them. But with people starting to use them in pocket picks or sneak picks or just straight up maining them, you wonder how much more effort players would put into learning them. Because here's the thing about the roster of Tekken, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. This game has like over 6,000 moves in the game. It's a lot of moves in this game. A pro can't learn them all, can't lab them all. You have to just narrow it down. This is why we see tier lists. This is why we see which characters are the most dangerous to watch out for. Those ones, you really lab everything about them. But the other ones, you kind of just go off a little bit of a knowledge, right? This is why we see sometimes pro players miss punishes or do this to some of the more obscure characters. But with players really starting to do work with some of these underrated characters, it's really going to force all of the pro players to really lab everyone and everything if you want to continuously stay viable. Because this whole time I've been talking, Saint is using Jack, and there's a lot of people who, yes, they have Jack experience because you have Joe Crush and other Anakin who plays Jack, but he's not on everyone's radar, right? So the meta of Tekken 8 is shifting simply because you have character loyalists doing great work with their characters and rising up the charts. There is still some time left before the Tekken World Tour finals get here, regional finals, global finals. You have a couple of guys who are still going around to tournament and they're getting quick wins. Those last few spots on the leaderboards, you talk about 18, 19, 20th spot, are ruthless at the end of the year. People were battling to try and take a spot, to keep a spot. And at the end of the year is also when you see some of the leaders let up, like Arslan, John Ding, Nee, some of the guys who already secured their spots in the 1st through 10th place, they start chilling, they start sitting back, and they don't really travel. So you have some of the heavy hitters be out the way, and that makes it even easier to place higher in these tournaments.